Hey all, I have an amazing podcast for you to listen to coming up here with Mr. Tony Mowbray. I think we'd meet a more humble, amazing person who shares some great insights on leadership and some of the toughest situations that any of us could think we're in. Let's get to the episode. You're going to love it.
Welcome to the Enterprise Excellence Podcast, where we share knowledge from global experts in how to create high-performance, agile cultures of continuous improvement and innovation. Cultures where employees wake up smiling and excited to go to work and make a difference. Cultures where leaders feel they have the time to proactively serve the growth of themselves and others.
I'm your host, Jeavons, coming to you from Brisbane, Australia. By improving our organisations, we create a better future for generations to come. An economy where our children and grandchildren can experience the joy of owning their first home. An environment where they can enjoy holidays on clean beaches and marvel at the beauty of nature. A future where they feel safe, respected, and empowered to make a difference at work, bringing that energy home to their families and communities. This show is proudly brought to you by the Enterprise Excellence Community and Group, which is focused on helping organisations create this better future through this podcast, our community, where you can engage with global experts, tour best practice sites, and also our workshops focused on the most important topics to truly help your organisation improve into the future for those it serves. Visit enterpriseexcellencegroup.com.au to learn more. Welcome to episode 199 of the Enterprise Excellence Podcast. It is such a pleasure to have Mr. Tony Mowbray on the show with us today. Tony has experienced situations and events throughout his career that needed an attitude of never, ever give in. Tony is an adventurer and a sailor, competing in solo around the world trip in 2001, many Sydney to Hobart races, including the 1998 race no one will ever forget. Tony has just written a book on these experiences and more titled Never Ever Give In. We're going to explore the book today, especially from a leadership perspective. Let's get into the episode. Tony, thank you so much for joining us today.
Sounds like someone else you're talking about, Brad. Thanks for having me. And I wish I was episode 200. What's this 199 bit?
You missed it by one. Sorry, mate. I should have waited a bit more, but I really appreciate it, Tony. When Tony and I, listeners, we connected, Tony's looking at doing an audio book version too. And I was just honoured to be able to have a chat to Tony and really looking forward to this conversation. So, Tony, thanks again, mate.
Same. Pleasure to be here, mate.
So, Tony, I've got a hunch on this, but why did you title the book Never Ever Give In?
Well, it's an interesting question. When I first started putting all my thoughts and recollections together to, what eventually became the manuscript, because I got a pretty perverse sense of humour. So my working title for years was How I Avoided a Grown-Up's Job. And I thought, that would be a sure seller. People wouldn't even care about the content. But then as the manuscript drew closer and closer to its finality, it became obvious to me, it sort of almost jumped out from the pages that it had to be called Never Ever Give In, because as I documented what's happened over the last, well, particularly the two cornerstone events of the 98 Hobart that you mentioned and the solo around the world trip, when I look back at those experiences and adventures, along with other things that I've done prior to that and since, I ended up, as you do, you look back on it with a different set of lenses than you did at the time. And I'm looking at this thing going, and almost it's not me that I'm writing about sometimes. And I started to I really clearly recognised that so much of me has come from my mother and my father, particularly my mother, who had a really never ever give in attitude. The word give in, the two words give in just didn't exist in her vocabulary. So a lot of her is within me, and I've honed my attitudes as time's gone on, I guess.
Yeah, it's amazing, Tony. Tony, I've followed your career. Really, you came on the scene with me in '98 when I heard and studied what went on there in that race, and I can only imagine what your mother did instill in you to never ever give in. What were some of those traits that you'd say with her just really resonate, that sort of set you on the scene, that probably set you up to survive right now, Tony, I'd say?
Yeah, look, in the 1998 Sydney to Hobart, there are a lot of lessons to be learnt. One of the keys to it, of course, is to be after the experience, which is quite traumatic for myself and the guys. No one died on my boat, by the way, but 6 men did die on other boats.
Yeah.
quite traumatic, and it's another challenge to actually revisit that experience to try and learn from it. And so I was a very keen student. I went back over it and I tried the pieces of the jigsaw together, and I analysed my performance, I guess, for want of a better word, in that 15-hour period where we all thought we were going to die on my boat. And I as a leader, one of the things that came home to me was that in those incredible conditions, with I had men with broken legs and crushed rib cages and head wounds and knocked unconscious, etc. But in those conditions, each individual man recognised what he was good at and actually gravitated towards doing that as his contribution of a team effort to try and our goal was simply keep that piece of fiberglass afloat and sustain life. Yeah. And so I, as a leader, recognised that this is what they were gravitating to. So I then encouraged that. Keep doing what you're doing now and keep doing it well. And if we all do our job well, we'll possibly survive. And I guess that principle flows through to business and family, etc.
It's amazing what you mentioned there, Tony. So you know, it's amazing that you picked up on it too, because it could have been a real moment where you just start barking orders for people to do all different types of things, but you saw that you're all aligned to that purpose and goal, which is to survive.
Yeah, well,
and then it went.
I'm sorry. Yeah, in the coronial findings, it's interesting. In the coronial findings, which I read from cover to cover, I was interviewed for it, although, as I say, no one died on our boat. But I was very interested to try and learn as much as I could. And it became apparent in the reporting that on some yachts, factions developed. And one faction felt that a particular course of action was appropriate to try and survive. Yes, another faction would, think another way. And it's documented that they were pretty serious rifts, and that, of course, jeopardised the overall safety of everyone on board.
Wow!
Because on our boat there was none of that, and and we're still. Only one of us has passed away. There are 8 on board in total. One passed away. He was the oldest one, Snapey, a couple of years ago. The rest of us are still kicking. And we're just as tight as a bond as you could ever have.
Yeah, I bet. After going through that, that would be like that's a key. I guess for our listeners too that might know, Tony, you were out in the Sydney to Hobart, and you're heading down the coast of Australia, and this storm cell. Did it virtually come out of the blue, or what? How did it end up on you out of the blue so fast that you just had dramatic seas and crazy weather?
Look, the 1998 Sydney to Hobart the Sydney to Hobart yacht race, of course, is freely acknowledged as being one of the 3 toughest ocean races in the world. And I did my first one in 1973 when I was 18, and that puts me at nearly 70 if you do your mathematics. And generally I don't look 70, but I am apparently. I think about 7, but in my head. But on a serious note, the 1998 race was hit by a storm unlike any other race in its previous history. It wasn't one singular thing and it's quite often the case in business or whatever. It's a combination of factors. That's that domino effect. Mm-hmm. And if you take one domino out or one piece of the jigsaw out, then you wouldn't have a complete mosaic. And so there are a combination of things, but essentially what we had was winds that were around about 150 kilometres per hour, which was significantly more than was forecast. But hey, that's weather forecasting for you. It's not an exact science.
Yeah.
And on top of that wind was actually hitting head on a substantial current that was flowing south in the opposite direction. And anyone that knows anything about boats will know that when you put wind against current or wind against waves, the waves will become quite steep and increase in height. And that's what happened. So we had waves that were on average 60 to 70 feet high, 20 metres. And it's well documented by chopper pilots who are helping in rescues that the waves up to, 100 feet high.
Wow, that's unbelievable. I didn't understand
in our case, that. We spent 15 hours, essentially clinging by a gossamer thread,
Yeah. So, Tony, with that, the leadership piece of going through that, like I guess in business in the past and business going forward, we've been hitting some challenges, and I guess everyone's concerned about times ahead. You mentioned that in your experience and what you experienced through that race and others, that a key part was that unifying goal. Another aspect was having the team bond together. What other factors would you go, this is what really plays out? And all the other races you've been on too, Tony. Like, I guess this is race after race that you've done throughout
Yeah.
your career.
Look, leadership for me is not about beating your chest. I think most people would see and acknowledge that leadership's not about beating your chest and saying, how good am I? Look at me, look at me. It's almost the opposite to that, the way I see it. It's about quiet confidence. It's about commitment to the task. I'm big on commitment. I'm big on 100% commitment in virtually all aspects of my life. And when it comes to leadership or being part of a team, if you're 100% committed to the people that are in that team, they want to be part of that team that's having a go. Mm-hmm. And so in that 98 Hobart, we were simply having a go. Our goal was to survive and get back home to our families. 7 out of the 8 had young children, and that was a driving factor, as you might imagine.
Yeah.
And so it's the quiet, it's all the old things. Don't do anything that, don't ask someone else to do something that you wouldn't do. All those simple stuff that we all know. It's not rocket science. 100% commitment, get amazing results.
Yeah. Don't ask someone to do something you wouldn't do yourself, which is that real humility that you're willing to muck in yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I said to you before we started recording here that I'm just Tony from Belmont. Yeah. I'm nothing special. I'm just a bloke from Belmont, mate. It's as simple as that. Just so happens that I've got a bit of a crazy centre part of my brain that wants me to go up and do some crazy stuff at times, I guess.
Yeah, I can imagine. You've had an amazing career, Tony. And with leadership and on a race, I can imagine that you're together for a long period of time. Like you're on that boat and you're on there for a long time. What traits do you feel really play out to help you keep bonded as a team when you could be on there for days and days and days and in terrible weather like you were in 98 and others?
I think it's that, well, as a leader, if you're talking about leadership, you can't falter. You can't second guess yourself. When you're in, the way I see it. We're going, we're doing this thing. And in 2003, I did my first trip to Antarctica. Went down to Mawson's Hut, and I took 4 other people with me. And it took us 15 days to get from the bottom of Tasmania to the Antarctic continent coast. Now, when we were 3 days off the coast, we were hit by a massive storm, middle of icebergs, pack ice. It was just a really, really scary situation. And I have no doubt that if I had suggested to some of the people that were with me, and this is not all of them, how about we turn this boat around and go back? They'd have said, yep, no problems at all. So it's perseverance through adversity. It's not always easy. If it was one of my catch cries, if it was easy, everyone would do it.
Yeah.
And it's not easy sometimes, is it?
Yeah.
We were speaking about that before we started recording. Each day throws up a new set of challenges.
No, you're very much, especially when you say like you're leading by example and you don't ask someone to do something you do yourself. You've got to be on your game the whole time by the sounds of it.
Yeah, look, there are a few things. For example, when I say with the around the world trip, which we haven't touched on yet, but I constantly talk about we. I never say I. I try very hard not to say I. Sometimes it's inescapable, of course, but generally that feeling comes through to other people. People feel part of the team. If it's I this, I that, if you're an autocrat, this is never going to work. Now, when I sailed around Cape Horn and around the world trip, people say, but I was just the jockey. I was just one part of a massive team. I was just doing the sailing bit. Yeah.
And that's interesting, isn't it? It's a really great point that you're on a solo around the world, but there's a team with you, and it's that's going to get you around that world too. I never picked up on that.
All on board with me in spirit.
Yeah, wow. And Tony, on that round the world, that is one event that I haven't been able to learn too much about from yourself. Yeah. I'm interested in it. How did you play it out with the team on that trip, and how did the trip go? What did you
Okay, so the 1998 Sydney Hobart is a fully crewed race, so we had 8 of us on board the boat. And to give you some chronology and some perspective on it, the boat was blowing out the water. I was blowing out the water physically, financially, emotionally. In the book, I say any word that ends in ALLY, that applied to me. And I committed to attempting to sail solo, non-stop and unassisted around the world 18 months prior to the 98 Hobart. So I was 18 months into preparation, spent every spare dollar I had on the boat, and we were in the Hobart essentially just to trial out the new systems and see the modifications if they were working well. We weren't there to wreck the boat, which essentially we did. Anyhow, I got the boat back. Now, I actually made a note when I got your email, Brad, and I was thinking about it, never ever give in. I actually gave in once for about 2 weeks, which was in January 1999. And so what happened was after the 98 Hobart, I went on national television and I said, the around the world attempt, I'm done, I'm finished. I'm going home to mow the lawn and put a load of washing on. And I mowed the lawn, but I don't think I did the washing. So I actually walked away, but the human mind being, my mind being what it is, can rationalise out most things, as I think most of us can. And over the next 2 weeks, I began rationalising. And the thing it always came back to was that word commitment. In June 1997, I'd committed to a course of action in my life. I didn't have much of a shot left in the locker, but I knew I just had to go back. So eventually I recommitted, and I delayed it by a year. Yeah. The around the world trip itself, for me, there are many races that go around the world, but this was not a race. This was my own personal challenge to see if I could sail out of Newcastle Harbour here in New South Wales on the east coast of Australia, go all the way around the world without stopping, and arrive back into Newcastle Harbour again.
Wow.
I thought it'd take about 6 months, but everything I did, I built a 3-month safety buffer. So on board has to be everything. It's unassisted. You can't get help from anywhere. So when I crossed my start line, I had to have 9 months worth of food, spares, sails, clothing, systems, etc. And to give you some idea of how onerous it is, at the time that I committed to it in 97, only 3 Australians had ever achieved it. Wow. And then when I eventually did achieve it, I was the 6th Australian to do so.
Wow.
That's pretty crazy.
It is crazy.
Yeah. Crazy analogy. The more people have been into outer space than have done it, which I find really weird, but so be it.
But the challenges you face, Tony, on that sort of trip, like the ocean can throw up all things, but the thing that you must have shown absolute grit to get past 98 and gear yourself up mentally to do that solo. Like, I couldn't imagine that.
It's and like I say, when I look back on the book now and I read, because I didn't just write it all in one go just recently, I've done it progressively. I'm not too sure why it's taken so long. I'm not too sure whether subconsciously there's something Freudian there, or I've been a little bit unsure about facing it all. I don't think that's the case. I think it's just because I'm easily distracted and I've been off doing other things. But yeah, it's that period of my life after the 98 Hobart up to leaving for the around the world trip was just tumultuous in my mind. My mind was just a million miles an hour with so many things. I knew I wasn't right. I felt that I would come right if I just, the old analogy, get back on the horse.
Yeah. And on the round the world, Tony, did you face some pretty hard seas at times on that one too?
Yeah, I was out there for 181 days. And to give you some crazy stats, I only saw land for a total of 3 days out of 181. So the rest was just ocean, sky, whales, dolphins. I didn't see a human being from the day I left to the day I got back. I've got to say that I really consider this, and there's one thing that I might actually, talking about leadership, one of the greatest assets to my life now, I believe, is the fact that I had 6 months to sit and think deeply. Mm-hmm. Now, most of us, when we leave work at the end of the day and we go home, we think we're thinking, but all we're doing is thinking about the things we haven't done and the things we've got to rush into tomorrow or on the way to work, what I've got to do when I get to the office. That's not thinking. Mm. So I had this great opportunity to sit and think about where might my life head to?
Yeah.
Where might I be able to help my children's lives, develop? Might I be able to build a bigger, more stable, stronger platform for them to springboard into their future lives? So I really consider that to be a great asset.
Really.
So thinking.
You think about how much chance we get nowadays to think.
No, we don't.
My out on that is trekking. So I got to admit, Tony, I don't get 6 months of it, but with my boy, we go out trekking and I'll get walking along those tracks for all day. You get to think a bit.
You get an incredible perspective on things, don't you?
Yeah. Or an airline flight.
Yeah. And so, if there's a leader listening now in business or in the sporting arena or in a family environment as a parent, maybe take some time out and just do some serious thinking from time to time.
Yeah. Yeah. And just get away from it.
Yeah.
It just gives you that time to really reset and know what's important and really be clear on what you're going to do.
My word, clear goals.
Yeah.
Clear goals.
Tony, is there any advice you'd give to leaders on handling pressure at the moment? Like, you've been through some real pressure cooker situations. And I know that a lot of leaders out there, particularly in industry and manufacturing, who listen a lot to this podcast around the world, they're under pressure every day. And, that coping with that pressure.
There's that old saying, I have pressure for breakfast type of thing, but that's a bit flippant. Look, pressure's everywhere, isn't it? Like you've only got to turn around, look over your shoulder, and it's there
Yeah.
in so many different forms, so many different aspects of our lives. For me, one of the things that I'm addicted to is that feeling of achievement.
Mm.
And everyone that's listening will have experienced this in various aspects of their lives, I'm sure. But that feeling that you have when you've committed to a course of action in your life, and then you've ground it out, you've put it all in place, and you've broken the big challenge down a series of smaller challenges, you've achieved each one, and finally you achieve the overall goal. It could take years to achieve. Or, the money's one thing, but it's that feeling of inner peace and self-satisfaction that you get by achieving that goal. That's your reward. That's your personal reward. And that's what I keep looking for. Like a drug addict, I guess, I keep looking for that feeling of reward. And so that to me is the reward for persevering and busting through. There's a few other things: flexibility, understanding, and acceptance. Three key words that I've put together over the years. So be flexible in your approach, understand what's happening and accept it, but keep moving.
Mm-hmm.
As a leader, make a decision. Sometimes we're fraught with will I, won't I, will I, won't I? What decision will I make? Well, teams don't respect a leader that won't make a decision. And as a leader, come to terms with the fact that every decision you make isn't always going to be the right one. But make a decision, move with it, and if it proves that it's not quite correct, then adapt and amend as you go along. But keep working your way forward. Don't stop.
I love that, Tony. I love that. I love that piece of, lean into the goal, focus on the goal, and break it down to the small bits to get there. But then make a decision. Don't sit on the fence. Keep moving.
Yeah, if you go to the leader or the CEO and you go, look, I've got this great idea and I think this, and you lay it all out, and they sit there and they listen to it, and you come back a week later and you go, what do you think? And he hasn't made a decision, or you come back a week later for a third chop. What happens? You just lost respect. They've lost respect for you. You're not a leader. Sitting in the cardigan.
Yeah. No, that's it. That's it. And certainly in the environments you've been in and you've led through, you have to make that decision. You have to keep moving forward because there's no option to move back, is there?
In the 98 Hobart, at 4:03 on the Sunday afternoon, the 27th of December 1998, so Solo Globe, my yacht, was 43 feet long and 8.5 tons. There were 8 of us on the boat, 4 up and 4 down, and the boat got taken from a vertical position and completely inverted, and then surfed and smashed down the face of a 60-foot wave upside down. And when that happened, the mast broke and water flooded in the boat, et cetera, et cetera. We eventually came up the right way 20 seconds later with mayhem and blood everywhere, and people knocked unconscious, etc. In my mind, as a leader, what snapped into my mind straight away is a priority list.
Yeah.
Right. This is what we've got to do. I could sit here and console you because you've got a broken leg. Meanwhile, the boat sinks and we're all dead. So let's prioritise. You'll have to look after yourself for a minute or two. Well, I'll go off and detach the mast and throw it over the side and bail the boat out and do a few other things. But now we'll look at your broken leg.
Yeah.
So prioritise is a big thing. One thing I thought about earlier on, and I'm not too sure how this ties in, but I'll mention it anyhow. So you mentioned about, did I have any bad weather on the around the world trip? 5 months into the trip, I was 1,600 miles southwest of Cape Leeuwin in southwest Western Australia, and I got hunted down by an ex-cyclone called Cyclone Dira that had formed over near Madagascar in South Africa, and it hunted me down across the Southern Ocean, Indian Southern Ocean, eventually got me, and 5 months into the trip, I went upside down again, only this time I was on my own doing it, and that was a pretty crazy 72 hours. I went without sleep, and I was right on the edge. I regrouped, got going again, got around the bottom of Tasmania, and then you wouldn't believe it, at the top end of Bass Strait, when I was only about 2 days sailing away from the finish line, I got belted by another storm, and for the second time around the world trip, I was in full-blown survival mode with my back to the wall, just surviving one wave to the next. Now, that was really difficult emotionally because so often it's a test of your mind, like your physical presence, isn't it? People listening to this podcast, make no mistake, it's a test of your mind. Your mind can be your greatest asset or it can be your worst enemy sometimes, can't it? So that was really hard to cope with for me because I was only just 2 days from the finish. But that night, in the book, I've entitled that chapter "A Night of Lunacy."
I could imagine.
Yeah, it was just crazy. But we got through it, and the sun came up and the rainbows came out, and we survived another day.
Far out. Yeah, I could only imagine, Tony. I could only imagine, especially when you're so close to home. But that's
Yeah,
what I'm guessing all those behaviors and traits that you mentioned of, being very clear on the goal and the
yeah.
purpose and, focusing on the next steps and being very clear and concise, all those factors come into play.
I've got 5 words that I didn't make these words up. And I guess the only thing we've all got stuff from other people and adapted it and whatever, I guess, in some way, shape, or form. I'm not talking about plagiarising, but
Yeah.
we've heard it before subconsciously. But I've got 5 words that I've put together, and the only thing that's unique to Tony Mowbray is the order in which I've put these 5 words. Everything else is not. And I believe that these 5 words apply across the board. I don't care whether it's sailing around the world or surviving the 90 out Hobart. It could be raising a family, getting your golf handicap down if that's at all possible, losing weight, etc., etc. The first word is a word, and everyone, I believe, is chock full of them. Sometimes they don't admit it, but it's dreams. And how good are they? Dreams. Now, I subscribe very strongly to the fact that dreams sometimes just stay a dream. They don't go anywhere. And they stay that way for a person's whole life, and that's okay. But sometimes they might move subconsciously or consciously to the next realm where they'll start to think about it. Maybe I can do that thing. Maybe I can get my golf handicap down. Maybe I can go to university, get better quality education, and come back and earn more money and do things for my kids that couldn't have done before. Think about it. You might think about it for years. And I know that everyone listening has done this in various aspects of their lives. Then finally, the big day comes on occasion where you actually sit 1 or 2 people down whose opinion that you're really going to value on this thing you've been dreaming and thinking about, and you go, listen up, I need to talk to you about something.
Mm.
And you talk backwards and forwards and say, dream, think, talk. Now, eventually, when it's 4 a.m. in the morning, there's just you and the black void, and you're staring at the black void of the ceiling, and you're wide awake, and you think to yourself, Tony, you've been talking about this thing for so long, you're starting to bore yourself, let alone those around you. And that's the moment of realization, isn't it? That's the moment you say, you know what, I better shut up and stop talking about it or do it. 4th word is commit.
Yeah.
And 5th word is act.
Yeah.
Dream, think, talk, commit, act.
I love that. I love that. And it has that connection to everything you've been talking to us about in the podcast so far. Dream and set those goals and think about it and be clear on, start to think about it, talk to people.
Visualization. Where do you want to be? There's a lot of theorists out there that talk about visualization techniques. Keep it simple. Just visualize where you want to be in your own mind and go get it,
Yeah, I love it. And then I'm guessing too, Tony, once you take this dreams, think, talk, commit, act, and you then can get your whole team across that,
powerful.
then you've got rocket fuel.
Powerful, powerful, powerful. If you can get everyone on the same, singing from the same page of the hymn book, the way I look at it in any corporate setting, companies just break your big challenge down. It's the same principle. It's the same rules and principles. It's just a different example. So they've broken the big challenge down. They've got marketing, sales, warehousing, production, admin, HR. It's all broken down. So if each of those segments or each of those individual challenges within the whole overall challenge can achieve the goals that have been set for them or that they've set for themselves, then they move, in my mind, my crazy mind, you move forward on an imaginary conveyor belt. And then if everyone's moving forward and they're all imaginary conveyor belts, you're all achieving your goals corporately and on a personal level, and eventually the company will achieve its overall goal. It's not hard. It's not hard. People make it difficult.
No, it all links so much to what you talk to. And the key trigger point then isn't the commit and act, isn't it? It's like, do we actually get to that?
No, you got to act.
Yeah.
You got to act. Too many times we see it in this day and age now with all this disposable income that's out there for young people, and we lament they're driving these flash cars and they're only like a first-year apprentice on red P plates. You think, how the hell they get that,
Yeah.
But the act, it's the old story. There's no such thing as a free lunch. Mm. You've got to make it happen. Success, I don't care whether you're a leader, whether you're in what element you want to talk about, but success is out there for everyone, but you've got to go get it for yourself.
Yeah.
Just get it. Just go get it.
Yeah. And it's when you really get to that piece of commitment and acting, because the dreams and the think and the talk and starting to plan up, well, that's that alignment bit, isn't it? But it's getting that energy, and then you can commit.
Then you got to act. Then you got to act on it.
Yeah.
Then you got to go. Yeah, get everyone aligned and go do it. Share the goal, share the vision. Look, visualization techniques. When I went set my goal to sail around the world, people used to ask me why. And I used to give this philosophical answer about, mountains were put there to climb and oceans were put there to sail across. And one day I thought, you know what? I've actually got to answer that question to myself. Why am I doing this? What do I want out of it? I sat and thought for quite a while, and in the end, it was really simple. All I wanted was one day the opportunity to get my boat, Solo Globe Challenger, to the entrance to Newcastle Harbour, turn around the entrance to the breakwall, look up the Hunter River about 2 miles, and sail my boat to the finish line.
Yeah.
Simple.
Yeah.
But how do I get that?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
got to
You got to get around the whole world to get
That's
back
right.
to that.
But that's what I want. And if I get that, I'm a happy man. And I
Yeah.
was. And I am.
Hey, Tony, with that team and other teams that you've led, I know that you've aligned them up to the dream, and you've lined them up to the goal, and you've got them to commit and act.
Yep.
How did you go about that, mate? Like, what was the secret sauce that you'd say in your behaviour and your approach that enabled it?
Well, one of the things is making sure that everyone's got some skin in the game, in inverted commas. That people are invested in it. That you're not leading them by the nose. That they want to be there, and so there's creating an opportunity for them to grow or learn or whatever it might be, whatever their hot button is. One of the things you've got to do is look at people and go, now what's the trigger for this person? Because we're not all the same. We're all the same, but we're different. And so what energizes this person, what motivates them, and try and identify that, and then try and provide an avenue for that or a pathway for that, for them to achieve it. I'm very strong on people carving out their own niche. I'm very strong on a team ethic. Not everyone puts into the team environment equally at the same time. Mm-hmm. One of the things I've come to realise is that when you're part of a team, there's usually one or more members of the team, including yourself, who are sometimes taking from the equation. Mm-hmm. You're going to work of a Monday morning, you've got some problems at home, and Friday you pick up your pay packet and you don't really do much in between. We've all had moments like that. And what will happen is that the other members of the team will recognise that and rally around you and support you. Mm. But one of the key things I've come to learn is that when it's your opportunity to give back presents itself, if you fail to give back, then the rest of the team will recognise that, and it's only a matter of time before they'll break the dynamics down and the team will fall apart. Mm. It's got to be give and take.
Yeah.
When it's your chance to give back.
I'm guessing too, Tony, on that, like you said, you said early on that you need to be willing to do anything that you're going to ask someone to do.
Anything.
But same as in that, you got to be willing to look out for the team and see when someone's in that bad place.
Stand up from it.
And engage in it. Otherwise, like you're saying, it can just disappear and it's gone.
It can't be an autocrat. Mm. To use the analogy on your boat, here am I nearly 70 years of age, and I'll gladly get on my hands and knees and bail the build out. I've been doing it since I was for as long as I can remember, since I was a kid. Yeah. So gladly, love it. Yeah. It's just lead by example. Mm. People want to be part or want to be around people that are seriously committed or having a go. And how do they know that? Because it oozes from them. You can't hide it. So it's not what you say, it's what you do. Mm. And it's how you say it, not what you say.
Yeah, neat.
Those sorts of things come into it.
And Tony, you think back through the history of sailing or the history of boats and some of the famous mutinies that went down. Oh, yeah. And I'm guessing those leaders back then, they weren't exuding those behaviours we've been talking about.
Autocratic.
Yeah.
Absolutely autocratic. And autocrat, you're not going to survive in today's environment. It's just not going to happen.
No.
You can't be weak either.
No, you got to be in there.
I said to you on the phone, we're all in this thing together, whatever this thing is, Brad.
Yeah.
Simple.
Yeah.
It's not rocket science. People overthink it, People have got all these great, phrases and, cross-selling upward markets. And you go, okay, good on you. But, let's keep it simple here.
Yeah. Let's set a goal, break it down and commit to it and start acting towards it.
You got it. Dream, think, thought, commit, act. It's not hard.
Love it, Tony. Yeah. And Tony, within your career, I can see that you've really experienced so much, learnt so much, grown so much. Yeah. What would be a 2-minute tip that if you were stuck in an elevator with a senior leader or an ops manager or of a company, and you'd go, look, mate, this is what I recommend to really navigate yourself out and get yourself to a really even keel where the operation's just humming. That boat's just fine. Considering they got teams, what would you say to them?
Well, I wrote something down earlier. I'm not 100% sure that it applies here, but I would like to relate it to you and the listeners. In that second storm that I had 2 days from the finish line around the world trip, at 4 o'clock in the morning, I was mentally exhausted, and I needed a second wind mentally. So I lay down on the floor for just a glorious couple of minutes in my wet weather gear, freezing cold, scared, And after a couple of minutes, I'm pushing myself up off the floor, and something hit me that I thought, I've got to remember tonight. I've got to remember as much as I can about tonight. And I didn't know why. Some months later, when I delved back into that experience, the thing that I took away from that is that, and I'm trying to be humble here as I can, as I'm probably not succeeding, is that what I learned from that is that it's the leaders that take on a challenge, whatever it is, a goal, a test, whatever you want to call it, and they can drive it to and through and across and way past the finish line with the same enthusiasm they had way back at the start line. They are what I call the 100%ers.
Yeah.
And if you are a 100%er, you will make a difference in your life and the lives of those around you.
Yeah. Never, ever give up.
Never, ever give
in. Yeah.
Never give in. 90% is not good enough. Heaps of people can go to 90%.
Oh.
So if my one word to a leader would be 100%.
Yeah.
Go for it. Do it.
I love you think about, Tony, when you and I first spoke and we were chatting about the book and talking about it from that leadership perspective.
Yeah.
With what you just said, there's no more beautiful title for it to be from a leadership perspective from what you've said. You know, never ever give in.
And that's in most aspects of my life, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, Tony,
it's a fine line also. I will say it's a fine line for people listening once again. It's a fine line that we tread between being, committed and focused and humble to arrogant, and 100% versus arrogant. So you really got to be aware that enthusiasm to succeed doesn't wash over people's arrogance.
Yeah, and spin to even that autocratic piece where you start commanding and controlling. It's like that yin and yang. You need that balance between that absolute drive, but that human factor to bring people on the journey with you.
Yeah. When, I don't know, when I was in 6th class in primary school, give me an example of my mum. All right, so I was in A classes all the way through. I get to 5th class. I just missed the cut and I go into the B class. And there was A, B, and C, 120 odd kids each year. And when it comes to go to, and we had an old teacher and he fell by the wayside a bit. And so I was a bit delinquent. And so when it comes time to go into 6th class, they want to put me in 6C. My mother goes, no way in the world. Up to the school, sits the principal down and tells the principal what's going to happen. Essentially, between the two of them, they decide that what he'll do is put me in 6th class for 1 month and test me at the end of the month to see if I'm worthy to go into 6B. My mother flogged me for that month. I just studied. At the end of that month, I get put into 6B. We used to have half-yearly and yearly exams, and not like today, everyone was rated first out of 43 or whatever,
Yeah.
I topped 6B at the 6-monthly exams. I get put into 6A, and guess what happened at the end of 6th class in the final exam? I topped 6th class.
Ah, nice.
If that's not a great lesson for, never ever give in.
Yeah.
That wouldn't have happened if it hadn't been for my mum.
Yeah. It's a good example. That's a cracking example of your mum's grit and determination.
And I guess in talking about that, as a leader today that might be listening to us speak, if they think about the legacy that they can then impart to other people, whether they be people they work with or their family, it's a pretty good thing.
Well, here's to that, Tony, because like for me, it's how we're going to create a better future for those generations to come. It's how we end up with better industry, better economics, reduced environmental impact. We just got to never, ever give in and keep working our way towards that committed dream.
We've got to help wherever we can, mate.
Yeah, I love it, Tony. So, Tony, when this episode comes out, your book will be out, but how can people get hold of it? How can they go and grab a copy of the book?
I am doing an audio book, as you mentioned, and I'm actually going to start recording that in a couple of days' time. It will be on as Amazon as a Kindle and various other platforms, I guess, as well. And there is a paperback version. It's 400 pages. It's 122,000 words, so it's fairly comprehensive. And probably the easiest way will be to go to my website, which is tonymowbray.com.au with a W in Mowbray. And that's the easiest way. They'll be able to buy the book there or be directed to where they can get it.
Tony, well, mate, I'm looking forward to it. And I really appreciate you reaching out and becoming part of this podcast to help our community create a better future, mate. And I can't wait to read the book myself, mate. Looking forward to it.
I might even sign you a copy for you.
I will be, Tony. When I'm next in Sydney, I'll duck up to Newcastle and I'll get this into you.
Just Tony from Belmont, mate.
I love it, Tony. Well, okay. Tony, thanks again, mate. Thanks for sharing and helping us create a better future. Thank you, Brad. Cheers, Tony. What a great episode. I was so taken away by that conversation with Tony and the insights and advice he's given me, that he's built from his career of being in some amazing and some very tough situations. Everyone, for those listeners that are interested, Tony's an amazing speaker on this topic, and you've also, of course, got his book that you can get hold of. Just go to his website that Tony mentioned, tonymowbray.com. Everyone, there was 2 key takeaways for me from this. The first was very much that connecting everyone to a dream or a purpose or a common goal. And if you can get that across your team, or the whole organisation, well, that's rocket fuel. The other part for me, the second key takeaway, was getting to that commit and act stage, where you're really leading out that commitment and act and driving forward, to those short-term targets and objectives you're after. And leading with that element of, like Tony said, don't ask someone to do something you wouldn't do yourself, that real respect and humility. And also that drive and energy without tipping over into autocracy or dominance. It's that keeping that real collaborative type of approach with your team. The key to it, Tony said, for me, was that finding what really excites someone, finding each person's win, finding each other's person's energy point or their hot button. And that's the way that as a leader you can get everyone on the bus and really moving forward. What a great show. I'll be listening back to this one many times. Thanks again, Tony, for your knowledge and input and everything you have done and continue to do. Bye for now.